Welcome back to Rapid Recap. Been a while since we've done one of these, but we met with Matt Rhule for the first time since Nebraska's Pinstripe Bowl win over Boston College to go over a lot that's happened over the last few weeks in this busy offseason. Transfer portal, high school recruiting, coaching changes. I think the most important thing to get to is just an update on some injuries heading into the spring ball. Steve, you have kind of a rundown on what's happening here. Nebraska is going to be light on the offensive line heading into spring ball. Steve, what kind of stuck out to you from that?
Yeah, so there are a lot of names, a lot of injuries. Football, violent, physical sports. So Turner Corcoran, what Rhule said about him was he had that hamstring injury against Illinois last season, and it didn't really heal correctly. So he had surgery a couple weeks ago, according to Rhule. So obviously, probably if he's having surgery, probably not going to be available for spring practices. That's Turner Corcoran. That's your starting left tackle at the beginning of last season. Teddy Prohaska, who had the ACL injury in fall camp last year, Rhule said he's right on pace, nothing more than that. So we'll have to wait and see on Teddy Prohaska's availability. Gunnar Gatula also had shoulder surgery. He, of course, was a redshirt freshman who stepped up for the injured Turner Corcoran at left tackle. So again, his status for spring ball, kind of unclear right now. So is Henry Lutovsky, a starting right guard who took over for Micah Mizuka early in the season last year. He also had surgery. So again, his status for spring not looking good. Tyler Canuck, he had surgery, but Rhule said that he is expected back for spring ball, and that kind of gives you some flexibility. Tyler Canuck is a guy who can play right tackle, right guard. So he's kind of flexible in that way. But then elsewhere with the injuries that Matt Rhule said, Demetrius Bell, who was a young receiver who got injured in the spring game last year, he did something to his knee. He apparently he's a little behind in his recovery, but Rhule said he's trending in the right direction. But that little behind in the recovery kind of leads me to think that Demetrius Bell will not be available in spring ball
at least for the start
as well. At least for the start, for sure. And then obviously Carter Nelson, the big one. Everybody kind of knows his situation with the hip surgeries. Very unlikely to compete in spring ball. So, so it's just a lot of names. And like you said, Tim, the offensive line is going to be a very important position going into this third year of the Matt Rhule era. But right now for spring ball, there's going to be some holes to fill. Almost
certainly, I don't think the starting lineup for 2025 is going to be out there this spring, just with all of these injuries. I mean, you mentioned those three names off the top. Those are that's the three deep at left tackle, essentially. Yes. Those guys are out. So Henry Lutovsky, obviously starting guard, going to be out. He touched a little bit on the center position as that battle is going. Three names in that mix for the center position. It's Sam Sledge, Jason Machachuk, and Justin Evans, the starting guard from last year. Steve and I have had conversations over at Inside Nebraska. Kind of feel like Evans is the favorite, but we don't really know exactly how that battle is going to play out, especially with some of the depth missing elsewhere across the line. So all the more important that Nebraska kind of addresses the line through the transfer portal. Adding Elijah Pritchett becomes all the more important with some of these injuries. It's kind of Steve talking to Rhule today. Anything else really stand out to you? I know we touched on some transfers and some returnees. Obviously, Deshaun Singleton and Deshaun McCullough both returning. Got some clarity on Deshaun McCullough, who can play a multitude of positions. Nebraska's going to play him off the edge. He's flashed as an edge rusher across his time at Indiana and Oklahoma, but hasn't really honed in on one specific position in his college career. He'll get that opportunity at Nebraska. What do you think of that move?
Yeah, I thought it was really cool and accurate of Rhule to say, throughout Deshaun McCullough's career, he's kind of just been put a lot of different places, and that's fine because he's a really impressive athlete at 6'5", around 235 pounds. He can do a lot of different things for you, but Rhule said he hasn't really found that true positional home where he can kind of own and then go off to the league and do his thing at that position. Rhule wants that to be at Nebraska with Deshaun McCullough, and it appears it's going to be a kind of an edge player, outside linebacker-ish role for him. But then Rhule also said something interesting, and it's something dealing with John Butler's defense and how it's going to be different from maybe what Tony White showed. And last year Rhule said it's not going to be a completely different defense. There's going to be a lot of similarities from John Butler's defense to Tony White's defense. But, going into 2025, Rhule wants his defense to be kind of a hybrid of a 3-3-5, a 3-4, some 4-down fronts as well. Again, not completely different than what we saw in 2024 with Nebraska's defense, but I found that interesting. I think Nebraska's defense is going to be doing a lot of different things, showing a lot of different fronts. And when you have a player like Deshaun McCullough, who can do so many different things, that just ramps up the excitement because of just his body, his frame, his explosion, his length. There's just a lot there that you can do with him. So I'm really excited to see potentially a edge, jack, linebacker, outside linebacker, whatever you want to call it, role for Dasan McCullough. I thought that was kind of like eye-opening for Rhule's press conference today.
For sure. I think it was good to get that clarity on
what
the defense is going to look like moving forward, because you and I have talked so much about how we expect it to be a multiple defense moving forward, how classifying it as a 3-3-5, even last year, felt unfair to what the unit actually is, considering how many different fronts they line up in. And more so than ever, I think it's important to not focus in on who's listed on the depth chart, but who plays, because it's going to be a good group of rotating talent across the defense, I think, up front, in the linebacker room, and in the secondary. Going to be a lot of moving around. We didn't get any update on the special teams coordinator role. One update, I guess, is it's not a recruiting role. Ed Foley was a guy on the road. As the staff's kind of evolve, and we have these 10 off-field recruiter spots and these 10 on-field assistant spots. Currently the guys taking up those spots right now include Keith Williams and Jamar Mosey, technically off-field staffers. So as a result, the special teams coach is going to be a non-recruiting position. So it gives them a little leverage, a little time to kind of do their due diligence.
Get the right guy in.
And get the right guy in here. There's not going to be any schematic changes. Rhule mentioned that. Or it wasn't a scheme issue.
It wasn't a scheme issue. It was a snapping issue. I mean, it was just simply like, at the end of the day, if Nebraska had a long snap that was on target, just consistently on target, perhaps Nebraska would have more wins under its belt. But
they addressed that with
that with Kevin Gallick, the transfer from New Hampshire, one of the best portal long snappers out there, coming over from FCS ball. So he's expected to make an instant impact at that long snapper position. But we can also talk about this final thing here, Tim. The spring game, the traditional spring game. There's likely not going to be one, and that's kind of a sign of the times, the new college football era that we're living in. Matt Rhule just plain and simple said, "Hey, we have a lot of talented guys on our roster. We don't want to have a televised showcase for other programs to come in and attempt to poach talent
away," which makes a ton of sense. But it's also, I think that's also kind of it's a convenient answer to the reality of. In this era where you are cutting down to 105 roster spots and all these different things, and the way the transfer portal kind of works, who knows how many bodies Nebraska is actually going to have come April 26th, the day of that final practice. As of right now, like we mentioned, those offensive line injuries, come spring game, how many more injuries could there potentially be, and so, even from a logistical standpoint, it doesn't even make sense to run a game. I think that's a bigger picture question moving forward. But there'll be some type of event for fans.
I'm sure you got to think.
There'll be a couple open practices, not at least one.
Open paid practices from 1890 practices like they did last summer. Those are good and gave the fans, something to get excited about and look forward to. So I'm sure there might be multiple of those, who knows, along with some sort of spring practice finale at the end. I mean, the program will obviously have something, but if you're looking for a traditional spring game environment, probably not going to happen.
Won't be this year. But that'll do it for us. We'll be back here. Probably, I don't know if we'll get another media availability before spring ball, but might be a month before you see us again in terms of a rapid recap video staying here on this turf. This brand new turf, by the way.
The red turf.
You can see this. It's red turf.
They got red end zones inside the Hawks Championship Center where Nebraska practices. So that's a change, but it looks good. What do you think?
Yeah, looks good. Like the turf.
Sure.
But yeah, we'll be back here probably in a month. For spring practices. This will be our final episode with Jansen, our producer behind the camera. So in the comments, drop your goodbye Jansens, and we will see you guys next time.